Hello from L3RN Channel studio and welcome to our newest broadcast. We're welcoming today Mohamad Kaissi, who will talk about enterprise risk management and challenges organizations face in implementing it. Mohamad Kaissi is a certified internal auditor and anti-money laundering specialist, currently providing consultancy and training services to many organizations across MENA and Central Asia. He is currently acting as a Middle East learning champion responsible for facilitating training seminars. Mohamad, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here. Shukran for coming in.
Thank you. Shukran, Drina. Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure being here. Thank you.
As business risks continue to increase, organizations are finding it necessary to implement some sort of formal risk management system. Let's start with actually defining what enterprise risk management is and why it is so important for today's organizations.
Thank you, Drina. Yes, I completely agree with you. In this day and age, we are seeing more and more importance regarding the development of a proper ERM framework that enables organizations to identify and treat their related risks. ERM, by definition, it is, as per COSO, it is the culture, the capabilities, and practices. When integrated with strategy and performance, organizations can rely on to create and realize value to the organization. This is by definition. What does that really mean? It means giving organizations the capability to look into the future, identify those potential events that may impact the achievement of their objectives so they can prepare for tomorrow today. This is what ERM is all about, preparing for tomorrow today. And after COVID and after the recent events that we have seen, it's becoming more and more important that we live up to this definition.
You have experience in risk advisory in the Middle East. Would you say that many organizations struggle with implementing ERM and identifying how and at what level to integrate it into their organization?
Great question. Thank you, Drina. Well, look, risk management is a journey. It is not something that we get right the first time. It is something that we get better at from one year to another as we become accustomed to dealing with events and managing them in the appropriate way. Now, when we talk about organizations, we need to realize something, Trina, that different organizations have different set of risk management maturities as we speak already. So, for example, when we talk about the banking sector, there's a specific set of challenges that they are facing right now when it comes to ERM. Whereas when we talk about non-banking or non-financial services, many of them in the region that are currently either halfway through or just starting their ERM frameworks, they will have a different a set of challenges in their implementation. The good news is that more and more focus now and importance is being set by organizations across the board on the effective development of ERM frameworks that can enable them to really achieve their objectives.
Is it something that concerns that risk management teams mostly, or it is implemented on company level?
Excellent question again. One of the biggest misconceptions that we see across the board is that many people or many employees have this belief that risk management is the job of the risk managers. So they believe if we have a risk management department, this is the department that is responsible to identify, manage, and treat risk. And this is so far from the truth. Every person in the organization is a risk manager. The CEO, in my opinion, could be considered the chief risk officer. The board, as a board, is also a risk management entity. Why? Because at the end of the day, it is these decision makers, the head of departments, those running the operations, are the ones that are taking the decisions. And risk management or an ERM framework is designed to enable them, these people, to do it in the right way, to identify those future events and plan how to deal with them today. Now, the risk management professional, the person who is an employee of a risk management department, is there to enable this process by facilitating it and helping these owners, these risk owners, these different heads of departments, management, and the board in designing the appropriate programs to enable them to do so. So it's really across the board. We cannot distinguish between those working in ERM and those, or the ERM department, and those that are actually taking the decisions and executing the activities.
Would you say that the pandemic emphasized the importance of implementing a solid ERM framework within the organizations?
Without a doubt, Drina, I always, when we're giving our courses, the first thing that I always highlight to everyone is that if the pandemic taught us anything, is that we still have a long way to go when it comes to ERM and risk management. Even those organizations that were under the assumption that they had the perfect risk management designs realized at the end of the pandemic that we were not there yet. Why? Because we were not prepared for the outcomes of the pandemic. And if we had more robust risk management systems, the costs that we incurred as a result of the lockdowns that happened during the pandemic, we would have saved a lot if we were better prepared. So the pandemic was an event that really highlighted the weaknesses that we still suffer from in our ERM frameworks on an institutional level. But one of the good things that came out of it is that it provided more emphasis on the need for organizations to design those appropriate ERM frameworks that can enable them to handle future events, future pandemics, or any type of future events similar to the pandemic or similar to the outcome of the pandemic that really impacted the way we do business and the achievement of our objectives.
What about the challenges pre and post-COVID? Are there any differences?
Well, look, pre-COVID, I would say that for those organizations that had ERM frameworks, they realized that, okay, although we had a perfectly designed ERM framework, what we put into that framework maybe was not accurate. Because at the end of the day, Drina, we need to realize something. Risk management is about the future. And the future, it means that I will be drawing on many measurement techniques, trying to predict what could go wrong. Now, for those organizations in a pre-COVID era that had perfectly designed ERM frameworks, what they realized, which is the same thing they realized in the 2008-2009 financial crisis, that the input into that framework was more a wishful thinking type of data that they entered into these frameworks. And this is why we weren't as ready as we should have been. Now, for organizations in a pre-COVID era that had no risk management maturity, had no properly prepared ERM frameworks, in a post-COVID era now, they are taking it seriously and getting a better understanding of the value that can be generated by a suitably developed and designed ERM framework.
What steps can organizations and risk management teams take in order to overcome these challenges?
Well, look, the first thing I would say, I always say, Drina, the definition of ERM as per COSO is amazing. The first word in the definition is culture. So when you are trying to define ERM, the first word starts with the culture. And by the culture, it means that if we as an organization do not have the necessary cultural attributes to handle risk management, we will fail, even if we had the best looking framework and the best looking documentation. So the first thing is we need to work on culture. And by culture, we have culture in the boardroom and we have culture in the organization. And I always prefer distinguishing between them, because the culture in the boardroom is so essential to be focused on alone, the way decisions are taken in the board, and what kind of risk management disciplines do I have in the board of directors itself will have a major impact on the overall culture in the organization. Now, organizationally, one of the challenges that I want to handle and also to deal with is how can I have these process owners, or what we call risk owners, the head of every department, taking risk management seriously. This is something that is very important, and yet we still agonize with convincing those heads of departments that risk is not an issue. Risk is not a current existing problem. Risk is something that could happen in the future. And are you ready to handle it within your own department? And what can you do about it? So the solutions to those, we need to work on the culture, number one. Number two, we need to work on the capabilities, for sure. And by capabilities is that I need to start training not only the risk management employees, but also the heads of departments, all employees, the CEO, the board of directors, on thinking risk. We need to think risk. And we need to enhance those capabilities by doing that through either on-job and off-job training seminars and webinars and so on. And then finally, we need to work on practices. And by practices is designing those policies that should be tailored to the organization, tailored to the strategy of the organization, customized to the external and internal challenges impacting that organization, in order that when I do implement these risk policies, I am really being able to capture and identify those real challenges that are impacting that specific organization. So my answer to you is we need to work on culture, we need to work on capabilities, and we need to work on practices.
What about developing technical skills? So what should our viewers focus on in terms of professional development?
Of course. Now, when we talk about technicalities, we have different types of technicalities we need to talk about when it relates to ERM. And this is different across different industries as well. So therefore, when we talk about non-financial service industries, we need to enhance the technicalities of those process owners, number one, those taking the decisions in understanding what is risk, what is an objective, what are controls, what are the different type of controls, and how they can have a key role in designing these controls. Because one of the major misconceptions that was easily rectified by the new 3 lines model issued by the Institute of Internal Auditors, which relates to that first line. That first line are the ones that are taking the decisions with the management, taking the actions to manage risks. We need to train them. We need to have them have the capability to understand that they are owners of these risks and they are the owners of the controls, and they have a key role in engaging with the second line functions in helping them further identify those critical controls that can be designed to enable them achieve their objectives. So that's talking about the first line. Talking about the second line, when we talk about risk management and we talk about compliance and quality control and so on, we have a different type of skill sets that we need to work on. In the financial service industry, we are highly focused on risk measurement because for banks, in their opinion, they've already identified all their risks. So for the past, they've only been focused on measuring those risks. However, we need to think as a financial services whether we are really applying ERM on a banking level, knowing that the banking industry now is going through major disruptions when it comes to fintechs, when it comes to cryptos, when it comes to so many different type of events. We had a whole session on this. We had a webinar on this with Liran, and we talked in detail about the challenges facing the banking sector. So maybe for banks, we need to focus more on ERM rather than on the measurement of those specific risks. For non-ERM, when it comes to the second line, we need to enhance our risk management functions in having them with the ability to design those ERM frameworks in the appropriate way. Now, let's not forget, Adrina, we have another line that we need to focus on, which is internal audit, the third line. And we need to make sure that that third line also has the capability to audit the ERM framework. And when I say auditing the ERM framework, we're not talking about just a checklist approach or auditing that specific ERM department, risk management department. So many auditors, they focus on auditing the risk management function as a function, whereas what they should be doing is auditing the risk management practices across the board, across the organization. And that's another technical ability that we need to focus on. Now, I don't want to go too long. There are 2 more points in this regard, speaking about technicalities, senior management and the board. Again, we need to make sure they are aligned, they believe in risk management, and they understand what it is. Now, this is gaining traction as we go along. Like we're seeing that improving a lot, but definitely risk governance is something that also needs to be focused on. And we need to work a lot with the board, the risk committee of the board, and the senior management of all organizations in seeing the different ways in which we can improve ERM in the organization. Even for those organizations that have very mature ERM frameworks, there is still a lot of there's a lot of things that can still be done and improved, because as I said earlier, risk management is a journey. It only evolves and gets better with time. We will never have it 100% correct and complete.
Mohamad, one of the programs that you are currently teaching at L3RN is a Certified Enterprise Risk Specialist. What can you tell us about the importance of this program and the benefits of attending?
Well, yes, CERS, Certified Enterprise Risk Specialist, is a course I started providing with L3RN around 2 years ago. This is a really interesting course. I'm not just saying that because I am delivering it, but the reason I say so because the way that I have designed this program is to make sure that participants really understand the true message behind risk management and ERM. This course is not only focused on definitions and theories, which anyone can read online. What we aim to do in this program is to help participants understand how they can integrate risk management practices into every single process in the entity, therefore enabling the management and the board to better design strategies, enhance their decision-making, and achieve objectives for their stakeholders. The program talks about key case studies about many organizations that failed in applying ERM. Because the best way for us to learn how to do things better is to learn from the failures that we have seen in the past. So we talk about how risk management failed in many organizations. We talk about how we are dealing with current and existing events, like, for example, COVID. Now we have a new topic to discuss, the current war in Europe and the impact, the geopolitical impact of that war on so many different industries and so many different organizations. We talk about current events, and then we talk about inside the company. How can we enhance governance at the board level? How can the board become more proactive when it comes to risk management? What is the role of the CEO and the senior management when it comes to risk management? And then we talk about the role of the ERM function and the different departments in identifying objectives, identifying risks, and designing controls that will enable the achievement of these objectives. The reason we do this is that we try to practically segregate in the minds of those who attend the difference between risk and everything else in the organization. So, for example, I'm not going to take too much of your time, but many participants still, sometimes they get a bit confused. Okay, what's the difference between a risk and an audit issue, for example? We try to segregate them to make sure that everyone is aligned, that we're talking about the future, that we are preparing our organization today to face those events of tomorrow by designing the appropriate procedures that can enable us to achieve these objectives in the most appropriate way possible. And to apply that, Drina, on an enterprise level, this is a very big challenge. And the main aim of the CERS is to set the foundational blocks that every participant can grasp and understand to help their institution in designing the appropriate plan to get them started with their ERM journey. Because again, ERM is a journey, and the aim of the CERS is to help everyone get started on that event. So this is what I can tell everyone. I can tell them that the CERS course is something like you've never seen yet in a program due to the real practical discussions that we will be having throughout the program.
Thank you so much, Mohamad. It was a pleasure to have you in our show. You provided very valuable insights to our viewers.
Thank you, Drina. It was my pleasure. It's always my pleasure being on your shows and in the programs with L3RN. I want to wish you all a very nice day, and I want to wish our audience also a very nice day, and thank you for attending.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being part of today's episode, and we hope you enjoyed it. If there are other topics that you want to hear our expert discuss, do let us know, and we will try to cover them on our next episodes. You can check out a recording of today's episode on our Vimeo and YouTube channels. Until next time, stay tuned.